people wait and I email it to you guys. So I will pass this to the rest of you. And the title was 5, but there's actually more ships than 5. But it's, I just say 5 because 5 sounds good. So what I wanted to, what Diane was talking about in creative nonfiction is that you're telling the truth, but you're using some of the tools of the fiction writer. And one of the tools that the fiction writer has is to write a scene where time is slowed down and you're no longer rushing through a summary and you're showing beat by beat what happens. And in fiction, there's premium on scene writing. And in fact, that's why there's that, adage that I hate to say, because we've all, you've probably heard it many times of show, don't tell, right? And that puts the premium partly on scene writing. It also puts it on summary that also isn't expository, that lets the characters act out their bad selves instead of you telling us that they are bad. And so, but when can we use scene in creative nonfiction, in personal essays and memoir? We can use it quite often. And we want to use it whenever we can show something that happened, an interaction between 2 or more characters that is pushing the narrative arc forward. So even an essay has a narrative arc like a novel does, or a short story. We're used to thinking of those as having a narrative arc, but an essay and a full-length memoir. So, personal essay and full-length memoir are related the way short story and novels are related. They should have an arc that follows the narrator changing somewhat. So when you're telling a personal essay, you should, in some small way, be changing from who you were at the beginning of the essay, the opening note, to the end. And it isn't like you don't have to see Jesus or anything like that. It doesn't have to be like a complete reversal. It's usually a small change in perception that is linked to the focus of the essay. So, if you're writing about divorce, or you're writing about online dating, or you're writing about living in Issaquah, these are just examples. Or whatever that is, the car alarm that just goes off. It's however you began the piece, you've transformed somewhat through the journey of going through the story that's unfolded. And this character transformation is the arc of the piece. And so when you show scenes, like when you are taking up some of the real estate to show, okay, these characters are talking, one of the things you really want to think about is the scene showing the narrator going in conflict with the idea that was presented, so that he or she, you, because you're writing it, can start to change. So, let's say, you're writing, about living on the East Side and, how difficult or challenging you thought it was when you first moved here. Then you might have some scenes that show the narrator at odds with, the citizens of Issaquah. And if you're smart, I think a lot of times what you'll do is you'll show the citizens of Issaquah in the best possible light and yourself sometimes in the worst. or not, but that's something to think about. So you want to think about, what can I show that demonstrates this? So the thing I do with myself to figure out what I'm going to show is when I have an idea, I ask myself for an essay or a memoir, I say, has this happened? Like, when in my life has it happened? And it doesn't necessarily have to be dramatic. Or even like something you think of as your large life events. Like, it could be, I had a conversation with the bus driver, and it was so illuminating that that gets included. So you want to think about each scene as taking a little bit of a step forward. So if our narrator is very close-minded at the beginning, maybe each scene is pushing her to see her topic in a new, more open way. And like kind of so like the essay has this narrative arc where the character is being transformed, each scene might have a little bit of arc in it as well. And kind of a way to sort of check and see, kind of like you check like air pressure on a tire, like, do I have any arc on this? You could ask yourself, like, at the beginning, is there a problem presented? And then in the middle, like, is there a struggle? And then does it somehow resolve? So even in a little scene, and if you start, reading for this in essays or in memoirs or even short stories and novels, like when a book you like that you believe is well written, start noticing at the beginning of a scene, is there a little bit of friction? And it doesn't have to be big, but it could just be like, two characters slightly disagreeing about something. And then how does that play out? A lot of times the last line, it's not like there's been some huge movement, but there's a little bit of a like, well, that was, that decided that kind of feel, like a closing up of that moment. Sometimes it's even the sound of the last words that make that final sentence of that scene close. And I always like to think of scenes, well, so when I first started writing, I should share that I didn't write scene at all. Like, everything I wrote was a boring summary, frankly, and massive generalizations. I didn't even know I could write scene. Like, I didn't know that I was allowed to. And so then I finally, like, stiffly started writing scene, and what those scenes were what they call, like, talking heads. So it's like in a talk show, like, Matt Lauer says something, the woman who pretended to be black says something, back to back. I had to watch that today. Like the people just talk and you don't have it built up. And then I learned that there's building blocks to scenes, and I have those listed in point 3. Just generally, I think of the 3 blocks as the dialogue, description, which is like, I don't know, that's like a ton of stuff, so I'm going to circle back to that in a second. And then in personal narrative, the thoughts of just the narrator. So because it's not fiction, we can't know what other people are thinking. Those thoughts of the narrator in personal essay and memoir are so important because they cue us to how she or he is reacting in the scene. And that's one of the things readers really want. They want you to be like a tour guide through their experience, through the experience that you're laying out. And so if the bus driver says something to you and it's, maybe it's offensive, maybe it isn't, we want to hear what that narrator thinks, especially if it's in contrast to what she or he is saying. And then, like, description covers a lot. It covers setting, it covers what people look like, it covers those 5 senses that you're always being urged to use in writing classes. But one of the really important things that it also covers is faces. And, we're very visual and we're very geared to TV and movies where there's a lot of close-ups on people's expressions. And when we're in real life, we are looking at expressions, especially in conflict situations, to read like, oh, what's going on here? And our heads will bob back and forth. So when you have an important moment, it's kind of a trick is to like zoom in for a close-up, just the way that a director would do at a vital moment. So if you have two characters confessing love to each other, or the opposite, zoom in on one face, then the other face, and show his eyebrows went up or whatever it was, because it's very rewarding to the readers, because they get to read the situation with you. When you're writing an essay and you have scenes, I like to think about the thematic conflict and scenes that demonstrate that conflict. And especially if the narrator is struggling with something. So she's struggling with should I stay in Issaquah or should I go back to Seattle? And maybe the characters might represent the different sides of that argument within herself. One of the things that I think is kind of the highest goal of nonfiction is to really think about all the characters as having a reasonable point of view, even if you don't understand it. So, even if you think they're crazy, try to show kind of what you believe their motivation is, and try to show their humanity, even if you think that they are not human and that they are inhumane. I would say also speaker tags, so the he said, she said, and sometimes when we're writing, we're like, oh my God, he said, she said, he said, she said. We feel like, oh, that's too much. Once in a while, it might be. But have you ever had to count back and go wait, is that him or her talking? It's annoying. And it's also just completely breaks you out of what you're reading. Whereas, readers just absorb he said and she said as punctuation. So just feel free to use them. And then, also throat clearing, hellos and goodbyes, non-essential conversation, especially in personal essay, just leave it out or just summarize it. We talked about the weather and then he said, blah, 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 the important thing. If you take a nonfiction book and you just start skimming through at the scenes, even when you've read where you're like, oh no, there was tons of dialogue in that book, you'll be surprised. It's there's not that much, but it's sort of the greatest hits. It really zooms in on the important interactions, kind of like the greatest hits of a conversation. And one of the best things that you can do as a person trying to improve your scenes is take a scene of a writer you love. I did this in grad school, and I did Alice Munro, who I'm in awe. And then try to take your own content. You want to write a scene about living in Issaquah, and she's writing about something that happened in rural Ontario. You're just ignoring her content, and you just try to do what they did line by line. Okay, she has a line of dialogue. I have a line of dialogue. She has a short description of one of the characters speaking. I'll try that. She says, the narrator thought about what was said. I do that next. And it's really gratifying, because you're it's in People's Magazine where they say stars are just like us, they go shopping. And it's kind of like that. When I did the Alice Munro, I was like, stars are just like us. She's just a human being writing sentences, and it was really rewarding. And you learn a lot through doing it. And then I guess, one of the last pieces of advice I would give is really listen for little mannerisms of how people talk. Little expressions. The thing is, things that people say that you may be ignoring, and when you add them into your writing, it really makes the writing sound a lot more authentic. And, try to deformalize your writing, especially writing about American characters. We're very informal. We contract words. We do not speak in perfect sentences with, that to end in prepositions, like we end sentences in prepositions. And so really try to just start listening and absorbing and let that shine through in your writing. Now, do I do the questions now, or what's your format?
So usually we do them in a group, but if it works better for you, we can stop now if you've kind of formatted the talk like that.
Oh no, but we usually do them like
afterward.
Yeah,
you both
that's
come up,
totally
and because
fine.
sometimes it's the same question to
Right,
people.
and then because it might be something in Wendy. Okay,
Right.
great. All right.
Thank you.